Recently, the US tested a new weapon, one which just 2 weeks before was illegal. Banned by the INF Treaty, ground-launched cruise and ballistic missiles with ranges between 500 and 5,500 kilometers were eliminated. It was hailed as a major success by getting rid of an entire category of weapon, a 180-degree turn from the decades of creating newer and more destructive weapons by the two superpowers. But first, our sponsor, NordVPN. You've probably heard me talk about them before. You know it's important to have a VPN. I'm sure you've heard this over and over again on the internet or from your friends. And the best VPN, according to myself, but also PC Mag, where they were the only VPN awarded all green checkmarks, is NordVPN. They also won the 2019 Best VPN Award. With thousands and thousands of servers, double-digit encryption, peer-to-peer sharing, unlimited bandwidth, and much, much more. Right now, they have an incredible deal, 75% off, if you use the link in the description. But this deal is actually coming to an end on the 16th of September. They also have a risk-free 30-day money-back guarantee, so even if you don't like them for some reason, you can get your money back no problem. Use the link in the description or coupon code COVERCABAL, lowercase, no space, during checkout. Make sure to do so though before September 16th, as this offer is ending. Again, that's NordVPN. The missile launched in mid-August wasn't exactly new. In fact, it's been around for 30 years. Basically, the only change is that it was launched from land instead of a ship. The Tomahawk cruise missile has been a mainstay of the US Navy, a go-to weapon for the US in striking targets without having to have to risk manned aircraft over enemy territory. In fact, over 2,000 Tomahawk cruise missiles have been launched in combat, from the Gulf War to strikes on claimed terrorist camps, to Yugoslavia, Iraq again, Afghanistan a few more times, Libya and Syria, among others. This test was pretty simple. They took a Tomahawk and its Mark 41 vertical launch system, which is used on board US destroyers and cruisers, and placed it on the back of a flatbed trailer. The missile was launched from San Nicolas Island off the coast of Los Angeles. They did not say where the missile flew to, but typical Tomahawk flight tests will fly north of LA, over the mountains, across California, and into Nevada. Some longer flights will continue into Utah, but the press release simply said that it flew over 500 kilometers and successfully hit its target. It is not a coincidence that beyond 500 kilometers is the range of missiles banned by the INF Treaty. The sole purpose of this weapon was to do this. As I said, it was a pretty simple test. Not much fancy equipment or the need to build new systems from the ground up. They were able to slap this thing together pretty quickly and adapt the missile and launcher for use from land. Because of this, it's likely that this system will not become widely deployed. It seems to be more of a proof of concept and a display to countries like Russia that the US can and will develop these weapons in the face of what they consider violations of the now defunct treaty. In the next few years, a new system and possibly a new missile will likely be developed. Something more rugged and designed for operational use, and possibly a more stealthy or low observable missile like JASSM to better survive today's highly capable network of air defenses. In the past, the ground-launched cruise missile, which was also a modified version of Tomahawk, used a mobile launcher on the back of a truck. Each truck carried 4 missiles. These vehicles were kept in hardened bunkers until it was time to launch, at which point they would spread out to one of several predetermined launch sites, launch their missiles, and retreat. This was done to make targeting of these trucks before they could fire as difficult as possible. This is a typical tactic used also by Russia, China, North Korea, and others. The new US weapon will likely do the same. On top of this cruise missile we recently saw, the US is planning to build a new ballistic missile with a range previously banned by the INF Treaty. With the two weapons, the US will be returning to the pre-INF days, where they operated both the Griffin cruise missile and the Pershing II ballistic missile. The difference is that both weapons will have a conventional, non-nuclear warhead, along with a possible nuclear variant as well. The Tomahawk Block 4 is not only extremely accurate, but has many capabilities that Griffin did not, including the ability to change targets while in flight, GPS, a more reliable and advanced inertial and intercom navigation system, and data links further increase this added capability over the 1980s Griffin. On top of this, a new quickly growing technology has been hypersonic. The US is currently developing hypersonic air-launched weapons, like the AGM-183A. While these types of weapons were never banned by INF, it's possible that the US will be developing a ground-launched hypersonic weapon. Ballistic missiles are hypersonic, but they fly extremely predictable ballistic flight paths. So much so that modern radars, like the AN-TPY-2, are able to calculate where the missile will impact after just a few seconds of tracking it. Guided hypersonic weapons have the ability to maneuver, making them unpredictable. This makes defending against them much more difficult. The reason for developing these weapons now is based on claims of Russian violations of the INF Treaty, but also China. China was never part of the INF Treaty, but in recent years have built up over 1,000 missiles which fall within INF Treaty ranges, such as the DF-10, a ground-launched cruise missile, the DF-26, a ballistic missile, and even variants of both cruise and ballistic missiles capable of hitting naval ships. These weapons pose a major threat to US forces in the Western Pacific. Air bases such as those in Japan and Guam, and even US aircraft carriers would be primary targets. To counter this threat, the US has spent billions upon billions of dollars developing sophisticated defense systems like THAAD and the SM-3. This strategy is likely a losing one though, at least for the time being, as these complicated missile defense systems are extremely expensive, costing more to build than the actual missile it's designed to shoot down. China could simply outspend the US, building more missiles than the US could build interceptor missiles, and ensure its ability to destroy their targets. The US is now considering its options to deploy new cruise and ballistic missiles near China, possibly in Japan, the Philippines, and Guam. The US has also discussed plans for future weapons capable of hitting ships, similar to that of China. Deploying these weapons would serve to counter China's military, including its ever quickly growing navy. Europe is another likely location for these weapons, aimed at countering Russia. The US Griffin ground-launched cruise missile was deployed in the UK back in the 1980s. This today, however, is much more politically complicated. Many European nations, even those part of NATO, are hesitant to host US offensive weapons in their country. Their proximity to Russia makes them targets of not only Russian weapons, but also economic retaliation. Many European nations purchase a large percentage of their energy needs from Russia in the form of natural gas and even oil. We saw to a lesser extent this issue when the US was planning the construction of missile defense sites in Europe. Known as Aegis Ashore, the ABM system has been a major point of contention between Russia and the rest of Europe. Aegis Ashore, though, is more of a defensive weapon, shooting down incoming ballistic missiles, whereas these ground-launched systems are offensive weapons. So any nation agreeing to host such weapons will without a doubt face extreme pressure from Russia. Both Russia and China have spoken out publicly against the recent test, saying that this weapon only hurts further efforts for future arms control talks. Russia is themselves currently working on ground-launched cruise missiles, and according to the US, already has operational treaty-violating cruise missiles. Russia has long cited the Aegis Ashore sites as potential launchers of Tomahawk cruise missiles, stating that it is proof that the US was violating the INF Treaty. Aegis Ashore was set up to launch the SM-3 missile, but uses the same Mark 41 vertical launch system as Tomahawk. These sites, however, will likely not be used, even though that they could now. They are fixed sites, making them extremely vulnerable to attack. Both the US and Russia's new weapons are mobile, placed on the back of vehicles, to better survive and make targeting them much more difficult. China, who already has many ground-launched cruise and ballistic missiles of intermediate ranges, said US plans to deploy the weapon will further escalate tensions, potentially destabilize the region, and cause a new arms race. So, with this recent test, we are just getting started, down the path of intense political discussions, each side blaming the other, and almost certainly a new arms race. The next few years will be anything but boring.